dude, we've been writing advertorials forever for native. Heath worked with James before too. So it's like all a little circle. We're like, hey, let's just start talking more about advertorials because it's a thing a lot of people don't talk about because generally the people that run advertorials are affiliates. Like Advertorials, I guess just catch kind of everybody up. It's basically editorial content that is, it looks like editorial content, but it's actually an ad. So it's ad plus editorial. So it looks like a blog post. It looks like a news article. And so a lot of times they'll run on native networks and affiliates that will use them. They used to run back in the day, like all the ads people study from like back in the day from like Claude Hopkins or Eugene Schwartz, whatever their newspaper ads, their advertorials. It was editorial looking content, but it was an ad. So a lot of times affiliates run them, more direct response people run them, and generally it's just not talked about because it's kind of just, I don't know, it's just not talked about. Yeah.
Well, so what's been some of the most unusual use cases you've seen for advertorials?
Yeah. So they usually are, it's like, okay, usually it's going to be speak to cold traffic. It's going to be run on like GDN, YouTube, native networks, Meta, stuff like that. We have seen some where, and when I say cold traffic, usually it's like, okay, it's attacking the problem, it's starting with a story, whatever. We've seen some that are very much warm, not something we normally see or recommend, but it's just it speaks to a warm audience, a hot audience where it just like, hey, here's a deal, kind of like the old newspaper ones where it's like, hey, $20 for this, whatever. Like we've seen some. I won't say it's best practice,
Mhm.
but um there's some unique ones out there. Outside of that, I would say just the different traffic sources they'll pop up on. Sometimes people will use Google search. So for their colder keywords, instead of the brand keywords, some people do have success with like just the topic or problem keywords sending to advertorials.
Got it. Would fake review pages fall under advertorial?
Yeah, so I like to call them top five
Oh,
pages.
okay, yeah, yeah, sorry.
But yes, so we've written so many top five pages. So
Mhm.
yeah, top five. Basically, those are the ones where it's like, hey, what are the five best I don't know, air purifiers or
Mhm.
whatever, right? And so you search that, obviously an ad pops up and it's like, hey, here's the top five that are researched and reviewed. It ranks them. Usually there's like an advertorial or a pitch at the bottom, and then it goes to the different pages. So yeah, that is a great example of what I would consider a type of advertorial that is often used on Google search. Then you have just like the kind of standard like breaking news, which looks like a news article. You have kind of like personal stories, which resemble blog posts. Listicles, those are like those viral lists. So like 7 reasons you need this product or 7 reasons, whatever. So it's a viral list. Think of like the old BuzzFeed style. Those work amazing for ecom brands. Very high hit rate on those. And then there's even some like comparison where it's like, which is better, brand A or brand B? Where it's more of a not top five, but it's a hey, let's just compare and contrast two products. So
Mhm.
those are kind of the different types that we see a lot of.
What's so, and we're going to get into, I know you picked out a funnel that you wanted to review, and we went through it,
Yeah,
bought everything, and we're going to get into that in a sec. But I'm really appreciating the opportunity to pick your brain on advertorial. So I think they're so interesting. What's
go for
the
it.
what's the highest ticket product you sold that where an advertorial was involved?
I would say definitely $100.
Mhm.
There are examples out there that I believe go a little bit higher. I'd say so. What I like is I like products that are in the like 45 to $60 range personally. Or if you can go in the hole, $30, even better.
Mhm.
But I've seen up to like 140 as the lowest priced option available for people. So it they're on the other side. I've seen advertorials work with a price down to like $30. So it's like 30 to 140 I've seen. I prefer it just because of like the math to be in like the 50 to 70 range generally, but that's just me. They
Got
work
it.
for that whole range.
So you mentioned e-commerce, so like gadgets, stuff with,
Yeah.
yeah,
So a lot of people look at advertorials and think, oh, this can only be for like hyper, super aggressive products, but it doesn't have to be. One, okay, if you have a gadgety product that is new, trying to think of a gadget. So, for example, you might have seen those security light bulbs where
yeah.
it's like it looks like a light bulb, screw it in. That's a great gadget. It's like this is brand new. Nobody's seen it. It's like, wow, this is amazing. And when we write advertorials, we actually kind of decide the style and how we do it based on the product type. So,
Mm,
for example, gadget type, you don't have a ton of objections. You're not facing like a jaded audience versus, let's say, beauty, where if you're selling a beauty cream, you're going to face a ton of resistance. You're going to need to cover different things in the lead, the headlines. So it works for gadgets, beauty, for supplements, the top five and the review and the listicles work. The breaking news and personal story are really hit or miss. There's not a lot of examples with supplements specifically. Usually I recommend people like do listicles, landing pages, more direct response sales pages. Those usually work better, but you can also do everyday products. So there's examples for advertorials that are what I would consider improvement products. This is like the other category where it's like you just have a standard product, you have a gadget, and then you have an improvement product. Like an improvement product, think of bed sheets that are cooling,
mm.
a towel that is infused with silver that gets rid of bacteria so it doesn't smell and mold. It's or a fire extinguisher that can put out any type of fire versus your standard fire extinguisher only does, standard, right? So other one can do oil, water. Like basically it's an improvement on what people already accept. Those work well as also. So really if you have something you can dig into that's different or acclaim, really that's what makes advertorials great. Like I look at it, you want a newsworthy product. Now it works with less than newsworthy products, but the ideal always like it's meant to look like news. It should be newsworthy.
That's awesome. Where do you typically scout for good advertorials to model?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in the spy tools. So uh your guys' spy tool. So it can be hard to find. It takes a lot of clicking and digging. But there are advertorials run on YouTube. I have a fair amount. Native is the easiest way to find it. So using a tool like Anstrax or AdBeat. AdBeat is more premium, so you'll get Taboola, GDN as well, which advertorials run on GDN. And
Mhm.
really, so for example, on AdBeat, if you're scanning the ads, you'll get good at this. It's like, what kind of ad am I looking at? Oh, it's lead gen. You can tell just because it's like a solar headline and image. Oh, it is credit card relief. It's whatever, whatever. And as soon as you see ecom, like, so it's like, oh, this is, and there's like these small changes between somebody advertising a VSL for knee pain and a physical product up front for knee pain. Like you
Mhm.
kind of get it over time where it's like, oh, okay, they say something differently, they show the product, whatever. As
Mhm.
soon as you see those products on native or GDN, you click that ad, 90% of the time it's going to be an advertorial because unlike YouTube or Facebook, where you can like prime somebody in the video script, native GDN, it's like you get an 800 character headline and an image. So really it's like curiosity and the advertorial has to do all of the selling. So those are the most surefire way. I find them a lot on Facebook as well.
Mhm.
That is a lot of clicking or you can search like depending on the tool you use, like AdSpy, you can search in the URL certain words. So you can search like advertorial, review, blog post, things that people like, oh, it's a blog post, it's an advertorial.
Mhm.
So
Nice. And then just, when I think of advertorials, I think of some boomer age person on their desktop, on, you know, on their AOL account or Microsoft Internet Explorer,
Yeah.
clicking on stuff. How do you think about advertorials for mobile?
Oh, yeah, very important. Advertorials for mobile, very, very important. So for demographics, touch on that. Like it generally is better for audiences that are like 40 plus. Although depending on the style, like listicles work down to like 18, 25. But like a standard like breaking news personal story, I will push it down occasionally depending on the product to like 35.
Mhm.
But a lot of the audience that's going to pick up is the audience that likes to read, which is generally 40, 45 plus.
Mhm.
Mobile is huge. So this is actually a huge mistake a lot of people make with their advertorials is they study them on desktop, which they're like, okay, that's where I'm going to get a lot of traffic, which nowadays Facebook's 90% mobile, even native networks, you're getting a lot of mobile. So what you want to look for is really to have the first sentence of your advertorial above the mobile fold. So like if you open up the page on your phone, you'll have the headline, the image, and then you want like a tiny bit of that first sentence, maybe 12 words or whatever, to hook somebody to get them to read the rest of the article. It's just kind of like if you run static ads on Facebook, like that top image or your static image and your headline make a huge effect on the performance.
Mhm.
Treat your above the fold section on mobile the same way. You split test the image, you split test the headline. Some people even split test that first sentence because if you can get them started and scrolling, you've already won majority of the battle, you know?
Nice. So you see to this day still a ton of traffic on mobile for your advertorials.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
a ton. Majority is. And the other thing, like there's other good rules of thumb planning for mobile is one, every advertorial like that a client publishes or whatever, we like to pull it up on our phone
Mhm.
and look through it after because when you write the copy, it's like, oh, you don't know how it's going to look on the page, depending on the font, the size, whatever. So one, obviously font size, 16 plus, usually it's 18 plus.
Mhm.
Breaking up the text. If you ever hit a section, like there's some advertorials that do this great where you scroll and it's text and then an image, text, image. And so there's never like two scrolls of just text. And that's one of the reasons why I think listicles do so well
Mhm.
is listicles, it's always image, text, image, text. It breaks up the text so people can skim the subheadlines and then stop. You want to make your advertorial skimmable. So it's like every 150 words, this is ballpark because everybody has different sizes, fonts, whatever. You want to break up the text at a minimum with a subheadline or like bolding some certain text to make it easier to skim. But yeah, always look at your advertorial on mobile before you like send traffic to it because you'll be shocked. Like looking at yourself and you're like, oh, nobody's gonna read this. It's just a huge chunk of text. Okay, if I put a graphic here, oh wow, this is actually way better.
Got it. It makes sense. That's huge. What do you how do you delineate between like when it starts to become a text sales page versus an advertorial?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of people are like, hey, what is the difference? And we have a lot of, I get a lot of copywriters that hit me up and they're like, hey, I want to learn advertorials or whatever. Can you check out what I wrote? And I'll occasionally take time. Okay, let me see it. And a lot of them write them like sales letters. So a big difference is sales letters. One, it's the tone they're written in. They're written as a personal letter, like going back, that would come in your mailbox. You would get it. Somebody is writing to you because that's what you got in your mail. It's trying to blend in as a personal letter. So it's like, dear so and so, I am whatever, right? And so it gets to the point, it follows a different structure and the way it's written, the tone it's written in is different. It's coming like me to you. Advertorials, on the other hand, a lot of it's to do with tone. It's meant to look like a blog post, which blog post you don't write to somebody. You write your experience, somebody reads it. Same thing with a news article. You aren't writing to somebody, you're writing an article that they're going to be informed by. So a big difference between the two is tone, which then that affects structure. So the cell structures can be similar, but also the other thing is the spacing. So a lot of sales letters will have single line spacing throughout the whole page, which you don't do that. You don't see that on a news article. If you open up like whatever news site you frequent and it's click an article, it's going to have blocks of text. Now they're not going to be huge, but it's going to be like 2 to 3 sentence paragraphs, right? So there's also a slight difference in how you structure it. And then it kind of depends on the product, on how heavy the advertorial goes into, like unique mechanisms of problem, of solution. And this kind of touches on supplements, why I think supplements and breaking news and personal stories don't always mix. In less sophisticated markets, they can. And I'm not going to say they will never work, because there are examples out there, but they are rare. Generally, what we see with supplements is it's just better to go to a more aggressive landing page, or take the, time to do a sales letter or a complete VSL, because that audience is more jaded. They need that longer sales process. And when it comes to advertorials, there's just not, and again, US jaded traffic is what I'm mainly looking at. Just advertorials for supplements, you're better off sticking to landing pages and listicles, or making the jump to VSLs and sales letters. There's not the middle ground of advertorials there.
Got it. So, I mean, why? So let's say you have a new offer. Is your first sort of stab going to be advertorial to some kind of tech sales page before you have time to put together a VSL, et cetera? Just curious how you approach that.
Yeah. So do you have an example product? Because here's the other thing. I think it would depend on the product.
Okay.
First thing I usually do is I go see what people are running currently, right? So if I have to make a gamble and pick one single page without doing much research, it would always be the listicle. In my mind, the listicle is just a improved landing page. It's easy, it's skimmable. You hit the 5 top benefits, sometimes 16. They can vary a lot, different styles, but very easy, very smooth. You can make a million iterations, right? Listicle would be the first choice without knowing background for any ecom brand. Advertorials, it goes back to one, I like to do research. I'm like, historically, have advertorials worked for this product? So for example, heaters and air coolers, those have had advertorials for 20, 30, 40 plus years, and they continue.
Right. Yeah.
Like I just saw one the other day, like they just keep going and going. So for that type of product, I'm like, oh yeah, advertorial, clear choice. Other products, or it's like, can you villainize a competitor, or is there something gadgety or new or improved about the product? On those, I would say, okay, advertorial is probably a good play. And then there are products where it's like, look, advertorials probably aren't the play. So for example, jewelry and fashion. Now there are some old school examples where it was like, it was for a necklace that looked like the necklace from the Titanic.
Oh, right.
It brought that up, and it was like, hey, this is just like the Titanic necklace, da da da. You can get it for whatever. Okay, something like that could work, right? But it's a very specific, because normally you're not going to be able to make a claim like that. So that's kind of when I decide it's like, okay, is it targeting 40 plus? Is it solving a big problem? And are there any previous examples? That's just, if there are previous examples or current, 100%. If not, I make the decision based off of, okay, what are we seeing? And then usually if I really want to get a hit right out of the gate, and like, okay, let's just get a good first pin in, it'd be like listicle, and then let's go advertorials that are longer, sell more. Because that's the other thing. Advertorials, like video ads. So I look at listicles kind of like landing pages. There's only so much you can do with them. They are very direct. You're not going to lose somebody in a story, right? Where an advertorial, especially like the personal story ones where you're writing out a long story, those are like video ads. You can easily lose somebody. So the hit rate is lower because it's appealing to colder audiences. Now, when it hits, it will convert better and convert colder audience, and you can scale farther, wider, all of that. But you're going to have to take more swings. And so that's something I like to bring up. It's like landing pages, listicles, it can make sense to take a few swings because really the only thing that changes is kind of the core angle and some of the copy. With a breaking news or personal advertorial, it's like you are writing a lot. And if your lead top portion of your advertorial is not dialed in, it may just not work. And or the angle wasn't correct or the structure. So there's more that could go wrong, but the upside is also bigger.
So when it comes to launching these and testing these advertorials, apart from looking at the whole funnel, CPA, CAC, AOV, et cetera,
Yep.
what kind of metrics are you looking at in terms of get a click on the page? What are they doing? How are you evaluating the advertorial in isolation?
Yeah. So, okay, I've done a few things over the years, and not everyone will agree with this. So one is okay, easy to agree with. Heat maps. Heat maps are great. So a lot of clients just use Clarity because it's free up to a point or whatever, and you can kind of see, okay, am I losing people? Where am I losing people? Right? Clarity can be insightful, or any other heat map tool. I personally like Mouseflow, but there's a million. So heat map. Two, you kind of look at page CTR. So how many people hit the page and then click over? Now, traditionally, there's like a benchmark of, hey, 20%. But that is highly dependent on your traffic source. Are you sending from some random low tier native network? Or are you sending from Facebook? Or are you sending from Google search? Huge difference in CTR. Same thing is, what is your strategy on your advertorial? Is your first link the first time you mention the product? So maybe, 150 words if it's a breaking news, or maybe it's 800 words in on a personal story. Or is your link at the top of the page? Some people put, hey, 30% off now and like slap it in the sub headline, while some don't even put a link until the very bottom of the page. So something short like a listicle could have a 40% CTR, where a page on native could have a 5 to 10% CTR for ecom. Now, pre-sales are different. I'd still get those higher, but I look at the heat maps and advertorial CTR kind of like how I view video metrics. So hook rate, hold rate, all of that. I personally don't put a ton of value in them. Now, there's usually a bottom floor. Obviously, if your advertorial has a 0.01% CTR, nothing's going to work mathematically, right? Conversion rate can only get so high. But it's kind of like, hey, you can have a advertorial with a 40% CTR that bombs. You can have one with a 5% CTR that bombs. You can have one that works at 5 and works at 40. Really, the value that I've seen from like pinning down a CTR and a heat map is usually when it's with one client and they have a very proven structure and style. So hey, our leads that we write on average are this length. The first time we put the link is here. So then you can compare across your different advertorials and kind of get a better idea. The thing is, though, the answer is always the same. It's just like with videos. When a video does not work, or it's not working as well as you want it to, what do? You rewrite it, or you get a new hook or lead. Same thing with an advertorial. If an advertorial is not performing and you want it to do better, what do? You change the headline, the top image, the lead. Like the answer is always the same. So that's kind of why I feel like the metrics can be insightful, but at the same time, the answer is the same. So does it really matter? Yeah, no, it's good for catching if something's way off, I guess is the best way to put it. If all of a sudden it's like, hey, our CTR is extremely low for some reason. Okay, something's wrong on the page. Maybe the links don't go out correctly, maybe whatever. It's a good safety net, but not a metric I actively use to like, hey, let's optimize and like, oh, let's shut down this one because the CTR is low or whatever.
Got it. Makes sense. have there been any situations where you came in and you added an advertorial to a funnel where there wasn't one previously? And same and vice versa, where you came in and you say, you know what, we don't need an advertorial here. We're going to adjust something in terms of the flow, and pulled it out. I'm just curious if any major shifts have taken place.
Yeah. So we've added a lot of advertorials. Because that's somewhat of what we do. So we've added a ton of those, and yeah, sometimes it does amazing and it's like, wow, it completely unlocked the funnel. Other times it matches the control. So it's like, it's the same, but it does give you the option to use colder networks. So for example, if you're running on YouTube or Facebook and your advertorial is doing just as well, it could be worth then taking it to native or GDN or a colder network where you can only use a image ad, and you might be able to then, take it over there. So we've had that happen. And then times we've taken out an advertorial, it mostly comes down to when we've tested a different page and it may outperform it. So maybe a listicle or a landing page where it's like, hey, numbers are numbers, it outperformed, let's remove it. Or it's, hey, let's try to optimize it and improve it more. But a lot of times it's just numbers. So I would say we see less pulling out of the advertorial, mainly because it's still a fairly uncommon thing. So there's not that many people coming to us like, hey, I have an advertorial. And if usually it's already working for them. So it's like, we'll write more and it'll just work better or tie it or whatever.
Got it. Makes sense. I heard one. You remember Fixed, that little.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember. So John Belcher was on our show a while back, and he was talking about how they added an advertorial after the VSL. I thought that was interesting. Have you ever like put
Yeah.
advertorials in any weird places in the funnel?
No, I haven't. I would say almost every time we put the advertorial right after that first image ad, or I guess in the top fives after the
Mhm.
review section, like in the
Got it.
top five, then you'll push to an advertorial or put an advertorial at the bottom.
Okay.
That would probably be the weirdest. I don't
Oh, so
think
you
I've,
got two. So you got a top five lander, like
yeah,
and then
with,
push into a second
and
advertorial.
you can push to, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So on the top five, they say, oh, this is the one I want. And then they go over to an advertorial. Or
Gotcha.
you can basically put the advertorial at the bottom of that top five. And as they scroll, then they read it.
Got it.
I would say that's probably the most unique area of the funnel. Usually we put them first, and then what we mess with occasionally is where they send. I'd
Mm,
say 90% of the time they send to a product page
okay.
or a landing page.
Hmm.
A landing page with like the products and selections at the bottom.
Hmm.
Occasionally, and this is very product specific, you can send directly to checkout. But in those cases, it's usually because the product is an impulse buy,
Hmm.
or it just doesn't, it's not in a jaded market. It doesn't need as much education. Products that are like super competitive, like I've seen some funnels where it's literally you go through a 2,000 word plus advertorial, then you go to a huge landing page that's probably matches it, and then sometimes you go to a third page that expands on it more, and then you go to the checkout. I've seen one or two of those, and it was just like it was a $130-$140 product, so it kind of made sense. I'm The people that started and made it through that had to be so small because they also didn't have links. Like the links were
Mm.
always at the very bottom of the page. So I view it as the more selling you need to do, more pages you kind of stack up, less selling you can kind of get away with, hey, let's just send direct to checkout.
And then along those lines too, how do you approach, you mentioned earlier, sticky link at the top or no link until
Yeah.
the very bottom. How do you think about where to position those?
The default is I always start with the link once you mention the product. So usually it'll be headline, lead, usually they're blind and you don't mention the product by name until it's like, what is this product? That's when I stick the link or where you put the sticky CTA. And then what you got to do is make sure there's enough links throughout going down. That is usually what I do. Now, The reason is if you're running on native or colder networks, you don't want somebody to click and then click over immediately. Now, the cases where I've seen somebody stick a link super high up, generally it's because they're running a Facebook or YouTube video in front. So it's like they were already educated, and then the
Mhm.
people that want to click over immediately, they can, while the others can scroll down. But I will usually start in the middle, and then sometimes I'll move it up, not often, and then sometimes I'll drag it all the way down, not often. It really depends on how jaded, and it also depends on economics of the client. So it's like if you have a $30 purchase, you probably don't want to make somebody scroll all the way to the bottom of a page. You're going to lose so many. You're going to
Yeah.
be up here. If you have a $100 target CPA, you can do the middle and the bottom, like,
Mm,
So it also depends just on the math, but I start with right when the product's mentioned.
got it.
That seems like the happy medium.
So I guess that's interesting. So more impulse, higher up, easier,
Yeah.
more qualified, need more qualified traffic further down.
Low.
So they got
Yep.
it. Cool. Sweet. I mean, this is awesome stuff. And we're already, I think almost 30 minutes in here. So let's if you don't mind, let's explore this funnel that you sent over because you were talking
Yeah.
about I want to look at this and so we got true what's it called? True Earth. Earth Breeze,
Yes.
sorry. It's not True
Earth
Earth.
breeze.
True Earth is a
Yeah.
competitor. Yeah,
Yeah. Earth breeze.
Earth
Let's
Breeze. Now
see.
I can share my screen too. We can kind of
Perfect.
walk through it here. So we got, let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
Sweet. All right. So we got, I'm just looking at our funnel of the week breakdown here.